My name is Janice Holden, and I'm a retired professor of counseling from the University of North Texas. I was on the faculty there for 31 years, and my area of research is near-death experiences. I have not had a near-death experience. I've had many transpersonal experiences, so precognition, mystical experience, deja vu, past life memories, but not a near-death experience per se. I've always been interested, ever since I was a child, in things that can't be easily explained. And in 1975, when Raymond Moody wrote the book Life After Life, that is now credited with opening the field of near-death studies, I read that book, and then about 10 years later, when I was working on my doctoral dissertation, I ended up doing a dissertation on near-death experiences. And you know, a lot of people, after they write a dissertation, they don't want to deal with that topic. They're sick of it. I was just the opposite. I was absolutely hooked, and it's continued to be a fascination for me all these decades. Well, I can't think that there's one account in particular, but one of the memories I have from doing my dissertation is this was back in the days when we actually mailed surveys to people and then put in a self-addressed envelope and they mailed it back. And I was sitting at my dining room table reading one of these responses from a near-death experiencer. And I had asked a question on the survey. He didn't answer it directly, but what he did write was, that experience was more real than sitting here writing this response to you. And that really struck me, that the experience could be realer than this reality. My definition of a near-death experience is that usually it's under extreme circumstances of some kind. It might be a close brush with death, it might be an extreme emotional state or an extreme physical state where the person has any combination of 5 aspects. And the first aspect is the experience of their consciousness leaving their body. Different people say it different ways. Some go through the top of their heads, some lift out, some go through their feet, some through their chest, but they have a sensation of leaving their body. And then usually from a position above the physical body, perceiving the material world. So this is the second aspect that I call the material aspect. Usually they're perceiving the area around their physical body, but they're not limited to that area. They can travel to places, and usually the travel is based on wondering what a particular person is doing, and then zoom, they're at that location. Then typically the next aspect is a transition between the material and the transmaterial world, that is a world beyond the material world. And that transition usually involves rapid movement through space or some enclosure. Some people describe a tunnel, but that's not the only way. It's usually rapid movement of some kind through this some space, and then finding themselves in the fourth aspect in a transmaterial environment. It might be a beautiful naturalistic environment with grass and flowers and water, except that every blade of grass has consciousness. The flowers have colors that are not seen on Earth, so it's not an earthly environment. And people are in different other environments, cities of light and knowledge and things like that, and interacting with beings that are not of the material world. So it might be deceased loved ones, it might be spiritual entities, it might be recognizable religious entities, and there's always interaction, and the interaction is telepathic, mind to mind. And at some point during this aspect is typically when a person has a life review and reviews and re-experiences typically every moment of their life, also experiencing being on the other person with whom they were interacting and knowing what that person experienced as a recipient of the experiencer's actions. And then at some point the transmaterial phase ends, it might be with a choice to return to the body. It might be that the person just finds themselves back in their body. And if they do experience the fifth aspect, it's the experience of re-entering, their consciousness re-entering their body. And not everybody has all of the aspects. Although I describe them in the order they most often occur, they can occur in any order, and they can even overlap. Like one near-death experiencer went into cardiac arrest during surgery, and she found herself outside of her body watching the surgeons work on her body, and there were also two beings in the room who were, she later identified as angels, and interacted with them, and some very interesting things happened. So in that situation, the material and the transmaterial world occurred, simultaneously. And I should say too that the other outstanding feature of near-death experiences is that afterwards people are changed in usually very profound ways. And the research is extensive that shows that people become more compassionate, more concerned about others, less concerned about material things, often develop psychic abilities. Unusual things happen, like electronic devices in their vicinity malfunction, especially if they're emotionally aroused. Their needs for food and sleep change. They become more sensitive to medication, and just a variety of things happen that often reverberates in their social world. People often move into careers that are more service-oriented. If the person is married at the time of their near-death experience, they're more prone to divorce just because they change so much that they are not the person who said the marriage vows anymore. And the values of the people change, they diverge, and people tend to divorce. But sometimes the partner had actually started out with more near-death-like experience values. So then the near-death experiencer actually becomes more like them. Their values converge. In those cases, the marriages continue happier than ever. So there are these host of changes that are well documented through research. It's true that from a scientific perspective, we can't explain why people have near-death experiences. Of all the people who survive a close brush with death, 90% will go through the experience not remembering anything unusual. About 10% will remember this experience of being outside of their body, viewing the material world, going to transmaterial environments, interacting with beings that are not of the earth. And we really don't know from research why most people don't remember anything and some people remember this life-changing experience. So now I have to go into the domain of personal opinion. And my sense is that some people are ready for that experience to influence their life, influence the direction of their life. And for many people, a near-death experience is a course correction that helps them move in a direction of more compassion and service to humanity. Near-death experiences are one of a few phenomena that people experience pretty frequently that challenge a materialist perspective. Because in materialism, the idea is that the brain produces consciousness. But what these experiences indicate is that consciousness can function with actually greater clarity when the brain is not functioning, or at least we have no measurable activity of the brain. So it's I think, impossible to explain that from a materialist perspective. Materialism still dominates most of Western science. So, and I think going back to your question about near-death experiences that have affected me profoundly, I've been most impressed by physicians who had near-death experiences after they had become physicians. Almost to a person, they will say that before the near-death experience, if someone had told them what they were going to be experiencing, they would have just dismissed it. But having experienced it, it completely shifts their worldview. And although they were educated and were deeply entrenched in a materialist perspective, they now have a much broader perspective of consciousness. Well, what near-death experiencers tell us is that the purpose of human life is twofold. First and foremost, very much primary, is to advance in our capacity to love. And the second purpose is to acquire knowledge, to learn. And so loving and learning, and my personal definition of wisdom is knowledge plus love. So in my thinking, the purpose of life is to advance in our wisdom. I absolutely think that near-death experiences contribute something important to our understanding of human beings. We usually go around thinking that we are just this skin-encapsulated ego, and what near-death experiences and other experiences tell us is that we are much more than this, that our consciousness is much larger than just what's inside our bodies, and that we, under some special circumstances, we have access to much expanded consciousness. So going back to the question of meaning, I would love to see humanity embrace the meaning that near-death experiencers say is the meaning of life, to advance in our capacity to love and to acquire knowledge. If the world functioned that way, it would be very different than it is right now. You know, much less violence and much more love and support and people fulfilling their potential. In order for that to happen, for people to hear the message of near-death experiences, they need to know that the experience is more than just a subjective experience. So the focus of my research has been veridical perception, which means that during the near-death experience, the experiencer perceived things and later reports them that were impossible for them to have known through any physical means, through the process of deduction or anything like that. And what they perceived is later confirmed to have been absolutely accurate. So we have many cases, like over 120 cases, where this has happened. People from all over the world, mostly in medical settings, where the physician on call confirms the accuracy of what the person reports. And these reports lend credibility to the near-death experience being more than a subjective experience, but actually objective. So when someone says that their consciousness was out of their body perceiving the material world, their consciousness really was out of their body. When they say that they moved to transmaterial environments, you know, with environments and beings not of the material world, that's their consciousness really did go to these places. And if NDEs are known to be real, then the message is real, and it provides a direction for humanity. Probably the word that people use the most to describe the other side is heaven. I prefer just the neutral word, the transmaterial domain. There's a domain beyond the material world. And I avoid the word heaven because it conjures up certain things for people. But what people actually experience there is a variety of things. And there are not only these pleasurable, beautiful, amazing, wonderful locations, there also are people who've had distressing near-death experiences and have encountered entities that seem to want to do them harm. So, and I also don't want to call that hell because it isn't the stereotyped hellfire and brimstone kind of thing, but there are entities that are harmful, and a variety of entities who are helpful and supportive, and people meeting deceased loved ones. So that's my term for the varieties of things that near-death experiencers have reported beyond the material world. The majority of near-death experiences are profoundly pleasurable, and people are in environments and with entities that are exuding love and support and so forth. But as best we know, about 10% are dominated by distressing feelings, and that can include the person feeling trapped or caught in a painful, even tormenting kind of situation. And typically what happens is that the person reaches a point where they sincerely, genuinely call out for help to some higher power, whatever their higher power is. If it's God or Jesus or whatever, it could just be some higher power, benevolent source of love in the universe. And when they do that genuinely and sincerely, there are many reports of people being rescued, just being pulled out of that environment, or that the tormenting entities flee, and then the person proceeds to have a pleasurable experience that is more filled with light and love. So the lesson for us is that when we're feeling trapped in tormenting circumstances, if we can reach a point of genuinely asking for love and for help, that help will be there. My understanding of purgatory is that it's a sort of a waiting area between either heaven or hell. And some near-death experiencers do report that at the beginning of their experience, they seem to be in a waiting kind of situation where nothing exactly is happening. And then most often what happens is that they then see a pinpoint of light that becomes larger, and they feel drawn to it, and it pulls them into the being of light and the core of the pleasurable near-death experience.